I feel like over and over again, creatives are doing that invisible work of creating structure for every project. Stakeholders often think that this is normal, but it's not. You work with a team and you're just so happy about how things are getting done, but you're not aware of that invisible work that is going on behind the scenes, of how they are putting together structure, how they are making sure things are moving seamlessly, just so that you can be happy. Today, we're focusing on something that silently slows down creative work. So we're going to be speaking about the gap between what creatives obsess over and what actually moves a project forward. My name is Paul. I'm the founder at MetaCraft.
And my name is Anu. I'm the Creative Operations Manager at MetaCraft. Creative chaos, it starts very early, right? Usually from clients' briefs. That's where you really know how strong of a direction you have for your creative projects. Briefs that feel incomplete or unstructured, usually that can now snowball into a lot of other things.
Down the line.
Yeah, that will end up just making things messy and uncontrolled, basically.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the chaos starts very early in the process, like even before creative execution starts. So from like the earliest conversations involving like proposals and briefs, when every party is trying to actually determine the goal of the project, that's where it starts from. So if things like expectations, timelines, budgets, if those things are not properly defined early on, then it leads to a whole bunch of mess down the line. So I think some things still arise down the line. We can't blame everything on the earlier phase. Because I think even when like execution starts, design and creativity tends to bring up its own set of problems as well.
Yeah, it does. If you're assuming that, okay, the issues from the earlier parts of the project have been resolved, because the things with incomplete briefs and all of that, those things can be resolved through questions, clarification, and all of that. So if we've passed that stage, right, some other things still come in, right, from the creative side as well. When it comes to actually processing what you've gotten from the initial stages of the project, setting a direction for yourself so that you're not wasting resources.
You're not wasting your time
here and there trying to arrive at the solution. So that's usually how it shows up. In later stages, your own decision making and your discipline, basically, with executing what you have determined from the earlier parts, from the brief. And all of that.
Basically, it shows up when there's no clear problem to solve. It kind of like leads to creatives trying to develop a whole bunch of options at first when they don't know the actual problem to solve, basically. A lot of people think those problems arise during execution. When they're actually trying to solve that problem, that's when they start to notice that there's a whole lot of problems and things are not really flowing as best as they could. But people fail to understand that in those early phases, when there's supposed to be a stakeholder conversation, when every party involved in that project is supposed to kind of align, there seems to be a lot of steps that are missed, basically. All those things now start to show up in actual execution. I think a bunch of creatives, and not just creatives, also like stakeholders, collaborators in the creative industry, don't prioritize those earlier phases. When a project wants to start,
people are rushing to
do you understand? Get into it, get payment. I mean, creatives are rushing to get that deposit so they can start work. That early phase is just as important as the execution phase, basically.
So going back to what he said, right? It's still all about communication and alignment, pretty much. But there are some recurring things that you tend to notice. When you see that from the beginning, people are not putting enough effort into defining what the project should be and how the project should be expressed and the goals of the project, that can easily just become a very nasty situation.
Very messy.
Especially when you now consider situations of like tight timelines and all of that. Right. There are some situations like that you just notice that somebody here, either from the client side or creative side or both, it's not just putting enough due diligence to make sure that everything is understood. Everybody knows what's going on. That does lead to frustration most times with feedback loops and all of that. When you have an urgent project or a tight timeline, one thing that you don't want is to have more feedback loops than you need to complete the project.
Definitely.
And so in the beginning of a project, if there's not enough information and not enough context, it's just bound to happen that way.
It's just very messy.
Something is going to go wrong.
This is when creatives tend to focus on delivering a lot of options versus having a system that's able to guide the execution of their projects. I also think it shows up when there's no system for the creation of other assets, even after the project is done. This problem shows up when there's no structured planning in the beginning. So it's like creatives are focused on deliverables, right, instead of systems. I think for every project that's done, be it branding and visual identity, digital experiences, even spatial design, there needs to be some sort of system. That's why identity is very important. There needs to be some sort of system that's able to guide the entire execution of that project, and also still like remain. It's like sustainability, also still remain even after the project is done. Even if the client needs to produce some other assets after, they can do it very easily. Or if there's another project that is brought to that team or that studio, they're able to implement it very, very easily, and they don't have to start from scratch. They don't have to start from the beginning.
Adaptability.
Do you understand? You don't have to start doing things over and over again. So it's kind of like that system that's just needed in execution, basically.
This comes back to something that I usually like to implement, and something I tell people, right, is that projects can be kept really simple in terms of how you think through them, and your approach on how this project is going to go end to end. They can be kept really simple, so you're not having to do too much work, like gathering so many assets and trying to create new things
over and over
every
again.
time. Right? There are systems that you can apply or that you can develop where you know, okay, for this kind of project, this is your foundation, this is your baseline approach to the project. You're not rethinking,
you're not recreating
from scratch every time.
I think that's where like creatives gets overwhelmed and tired.
It can get very overwhelming now.
Definitely.
Imagine you have to think about every new project from scratch. You know, so it's about like learning and really stacking some of these experiences and systems.
To build systems in the end. One reality is how teams always focus on speed during a project. When things like this happen, there isn't much alignment, stemming from how problems like this always pop up in the earlier phases of a project, right? Sometimes teams, creatives always focus on getting the job done as fast as possible. Things like this often happen when there's no alignment, when there's no proper timeline for that project, when creatives want to squeeze in a lot of work into a small period of time, basically. I also think there's an issue surrounding creative judgments versus boundaries, because at times creatives tend to want to be free to express their creativity in a project. But then for every project, there needs to be boundaries on like how things are going to work out, basically, because you could want to do everything that you can, you could want to use all of the skills that you have, but then a project needs boundaries so that every stakeholder or every member of the team can make sure that they are solving that problem. They are moving in that one direction and they are trying to make that solution happen as best as possible. Because if everybody is trying to show their own power or express their creativity as best as they can start to be some chaos, basically, in that whole space.
When it comes to expressing creativity as well, you can also think of it as just being restrained in the sense that you have a lot of ideas, right? But you need to be able to be disciplined to decide which of these ideas or which of these directions actually work best for the clients, for the projects, right? So I think in some spaces or in some circumstances, people tend to think that the more options of design that you have, the better. Sometimes from the designer's point of view, they just want to create as much as possible and give the clients as many options as possible.
Yeah.
And some clients to also demand that you show them all the things you've thought about, every single direction or concept that you have for them to choose from. But usually that ends badly because of decision fatigue and also just not showing the best of what the work could be. Right? Not showing the best designs that will actually satisfy your brief. And when it comes to, I mean, all of this still ties back.
Definitely.
Showing your talents, showing your creativity. If there's no restraints, right, it can also lead to you doing too much too early. So with many projects, something that is very helpful is like a phased approach. In cases where you need to cross certain hurdles before getting to other places, you're going to hurt yourself if you try to be too polished or too refined in the beginning of your projects. So that's just usually not bad, not a good.
It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's not necessary. In some cases, you just need to show like a draft, but you now spend more time, you stretch the timeline, polishing a design when you're not even sure whether that concept works yet. So that's part of the issues we have what people obsess over.
Those phases are still like part of the process. Those are not the phases where you should be concerned about polish. In those early phases, a concept needs to be solid, very solid. So
when we have lack of clarity in a project, one thing that you notice really quickly is that it affects your feedback rounds. And that affects your timelines. So in cases where the context of a project has not been understood and a team has tried their best, executed based on the information they had,
what they've been given,
when you get to the feedback loop and there's now that conflict between what you understood and what you have executed versus what the other person understood their own vision to be,
their expectations,
that alone is going to drag your timeline a little bit, right? So that's one thing that I know that clarity can solve. Right.
So just to avoid that back and forth.
Exactly. So now there's more back and forth, there's more conflict. Your timeline is drawn out. And in some cases, right, your timeline gets drawn out. In some other cases, the timeline can't get drawn out so much. You can't extend it so much. And so what that ends up being is that your output is weaker. Right.
It has to be rushed.
You have to rush the deliverables, and you're not giving the project the best of what it deserves. And amidst all of that, we're also looking at team burnout. Right. Physically, I mean, because you're doing the work, right? You have to probably do more work. You have to do double in some cases to try and catch up with timelines. That is a big issue, and the psychological part of it as well. When you thought you understood the brief in a certain way, due to whatever lapse of communication there was, and that's not the case.
There's been so much work put out.
You've
much effort.
Put in all that effort, and then the client is like, this is not it. Right. And I mean, it's not just communication too. Also, if you haven't taken the right approach or followed the right process, it can lead to this as well. And all I'm saying is that the end product of it, usually it's fatigue and or a weaker output in the end. So obviously, like, having a great process, having a great system is going to help you mitigate a lot of those issues.
Prevent all of that creative chaos. I think I can also speak on the business side of things, right? I think there's the problems that end up affecting the creatives, and then I think in a project, every collaborator, every stakeholder is affected. So from the client's perspective now, it's like sometimes it feels like their budget is wasted, basically. When there's been all of this feedback loop, when there's been a lot of back and forth, when there's been a lot of revisions, things have been expended so much. And it's like the original budget that was planned for isn't now what is being expended. So like there needs to be sometimes in some cases there needs to be like extra budgets just to make sure that things get done. So it's like this is kind of like a drag for clients, for individuals, for organizations. It affects them in this type of way. I also think decision making is another problem during execution, during creative execution, when nobody knows who gives the final approval.
Exactly.
In a project, it tends to mess up a lot of things because it can strongly delay a project more than it should be. Do you understand? So it's like stakeholders just have to wait for a very undefined period of time. Brand perception is definitely another touch point for this. When we start to see all of these problems in a project's execution, when there's been delays, when things become messy, basically, it starts to affect the perception of the brand. It starts to derail them from that position that they would typically want to be in. It can be really messy at times. I feel this problem also happens because brands sometimes they're not consistent with the way they give out projects. So it's like if you happen to work with a lot of teams in a short period of time, things can become messy for your brand. It can affect your brand identity. It's kind of the whole thing about systems. Every time you're having to explain your brand to these teams or to these creatives or to these freelancers, and it slows a lot of things down, it kind of dilutes your brand identity in a type of way, because I feel consistency is a huge part of all of this.
If a brand is working with multiple teams, each of those teams is bound to understand and interpret the brand differently.
Definitely.
So they will not all have the same level of output or the same level of work. Right.
Even understanding like the project.
Understanding the project's capabilities, all these things. It matters.
Like different perspectives every time.
I think I get working with multiple teams on like different projects, right? But in some cases, you see a single project where a brand is using multiple teams to do pretty much the same thing. So, some outputs or some campaigns that should look the same, that should have the same level of quality, you see that there's a bit of disparity because it's two different teams working on the same thing. So
that's a huge problem. One of the things that we have to do to avoid creative chaos, one of the things stakeholders have to do to avoid creative chaos, there's a bunch of them. But first of all, I think collaborators, clients need to be very intentional about structure, which I think is something that our industry lacks a bunch today, right? I think very few stakeholders from the business side know about structure. Over and over again, that responsibility of putting in structure tends to fall on the shoulders of the creatives.
The creative team.
It's really important that clients know how to structure out a project even before they get in conversations with the creative team. I'm talking about things like putting together a very detailed brief, having clear expectations, knowing a timeline that you want to stick to, having a very clear goal for that project. I feel like over and over again, creatives are doing that invisible work of creating structure for every project. Stakeholders often think that this is normal, but it's not. You work with a team and you're just so happy about how things are getting done, but you're not aware of that invisible work that is going on behind the scenes, of how they are putting together structure, how they are making sure things are moving seamlessly, just so that you can be happy. So I think this is a major problem from that side. I'm aware in our economy, in this part of the world, there could be a lot of things that might end up delaying a project, and clients are not able to give approvals on projects. They're not able to wrap up and conclude. They're not able to give very clear directives as to where the project is and what comes next, basically. All of this just speaks to decision making. At times during a project, there's so much ambiguity as to who gives the final approval. A team, a company or a brand could engage a creative team, and in that company there's a bunch of people. I mean, there's probably the CEO, there's the operations person, and they're all in the meeting, or they all come in conversation with that creative team, and things are not defined clearly in the beginning. Down the line, this question comes up: who is approving this project, who is giving the final approval. There's this ambiguity. One person can say, okay, this is fine by me. The main decision maker can be like, this is fine by me. But then other stakeholders in that project can say different things, and there's still no final decision that's made, basically.
Just confusion.
So it leads to delays. Nobody knows what's going on. Things can't get done. There's no outputs. There are no results. There's no problem being solved at the end of the day. Those are some of the ways that the whole chaos can be prevented from the business side of things, basically.
When you're talking about internal process, right, that's for the creative teams. All of this obviously starts with understanding context and defining your own approach and defining the direction that you're going to follow for the project. I think what really helps is to take some time before getting into execution, before doing too much hands-on work, right? For teams to take time to actually map out the life cycle of the project, to map out the timelines and the scope, to really understand what is going to take
that project
to complete the project. This is going to affect, your feedback loops as well. When you have a strong direction and you pace things properly. So if you sequence your work properly based on the scope, breaking it down, you're going to find that feedback rounds are more productive.
More
and
structured.
The work is able to move faster. Nobody's saying that all your feedback rounds will come out perfect, like your clients loving everything. But if your process is right, and you are putting in the right amount of effort at the right time, you should move a lot more smoothly than otherwise. So just understanding systems, understanding the need for adaptability. Some projects are going to lead to other projects for you or for someone else or for the client's team.
For the company.
So it's also very valuable in the long run for you to decide and figure out ways for that project to scale and for it to adapt to other uses, other applications.
For it to be very sustainable.
Yes. That's an example of a workflow that will end up leaving everyone satisfied.
In the
pretty
end.
much satisfied, and is going to elevate the brief.
Prevents burnouts.
Prevents burnouts and prevents unnecessary timeline stretches.